On today's show, I'm flying solo. Going to talk about, in segment one, what things have we learned about the Denver Nuggets so far? What things have we not learned about the Denver Nuggets so far? What questions are really staring us in the face after the first 2 weeks, training camp, and then preseason? In segment two, Michael Porter had an interesting comment after the game on Friday about wanting to play more with Bones. What does that comment mean? How do I feel about it? And, what are some of the merits to maybe trying to move Michael Porter to stagger with the bench lineup? And then some shorter segment, but I'm going to look around the league and just say what player, every year there's players that get traded that you don't expect. What players this year could get traded that I would say, that didn't surprise me? We'll talk about all that today on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets. I'm your host, Adam Mares, flying solo today. Matt Moore has the day off. I got some great topics, I think, here for you. We didn't do a show after Friday's preseason loss number 2 to the Chicago Bulls. I don't really want to go into the details of that one because it's just a preseason game, because it was so long ago, and to be perfectly frank, because it wasn't televised. You had to do the illegal stream thing. So for all that, I'd rather talk more broadly about what we know and what we don't know about the team in this first segment. And one of the things that happened in this game that needs mention right off the top is that Jamal Murray got hurt. Now, after the game, he told Mike Singer, during the game, he reached for his hamstring, kind of came up a little bit limp, checked out of the game, did not come back in. I think that was the second quarter. After the game, he talked to Mike Singer, and he said it was just a cramp, not a strain. He said a quote, something like, not like I strained it or anything. So I think we can all rest assured that Jamal Murray is probably fine. This isn't like an injury. This was more of, a cramp is a thing that happens. You come out the game, you eat a banana, you feel good, have some pickle juice, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and just assume it is that, although it should be noted that the Nuggets play tonight at home at Ball Arena against the Phoenix Suns in preseason game number 3. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray not expected to play in those games. So Jokic wrist, we're told not a big deal, but here he is missing the second game. Jamal Murray checks out the game early in game number 2, told us not a big deal, but then again, he's probably resting here. To me, here's how I would look at it. I'm not concerned about either of these two things. If they don't play on Wednesday, if neither one of them play on Wednesday, my concern level would probably become meaningful. Not high, not panic or anything like that, but I would start to look at that and go, okay, so Jokic only played 1 out of 4 preseason games at that point. Just getting a rhythm, all of those things, you start to lose out on the opportunity there. And then more importantly, playing together. And then Jamal Murray, if he misses on Wednesday, again, we were told it was nothing. Sitting out Monday makes sense, especially if you're a team and you say, hey, we don't want Murray to play 5 preseason games. He's already played 1.5 basically, or 2 halves, I should say. You probably want to find one for him to rest. And if Murray isn't playing this one, maybe this is why you pick this one. You just say, hey, let's rest him, and then we'll bring the entire band back together for Wednesday. That would make sense to me. So we'll go ahead and couch all of those thoughts until Wednesday, and we'll just kind of assume this middle preseason game is sort of not the least important, because important things happen, but it's the least important for the starters. So let's get right into what we've learned about the Nuggets so far through 2 preseason games and a training camp. The first thing I have on here, my top line note, is that the defense needs work. The Nuggets want to be a top 5 defense in the NBA this season. That was Michael Malone's goal. To me, it's one of those things where I look at it and I go, they look so far from that. And it's just preseason. I don't want to read into it. Teams have looked bad before in the preseason defensively and then come out and been juggernauts. Denver last year didn't look good in the preseason. They come out and they beat the Phoenix Suns in game number 1. That being said, this was a season that was all about excitement. Jamal Murray coming back, Michael Porter coming back. You got new defensive guys in here, and Bruce Brown and KCP, and okay, here we're going to make a defensive push. And the fact that they have looked so bad, not just that they've looked bad, but that they've given up huge point totals and have looked in large stretches of these preseason games, they've looked pretty impotent on the defensive end. To me, is the top storyline. Again, tonight's game, Monday's game, probably can't read in a whole lot because of the guys that aren't on the court. But we get into Wednesday and Friday. If the starters do play, I hope that we see some strings of, okay, there it is. Even if it's not a great overall defensive effort, you just see something that tells you, okay, this team can string together some good defensive sequences. So defense needs work. And part of that reason the defense needs work is, Jamal Murray is part of that. The new guys haven't necessarily made, especially like guys like KCP, haven't made a huge imprint yet on the defense, shutting down guys. There were a lot of transition buckets. There was a lot of just like not keeping your guy in front of you in the first two games. But some of this is also like, I want to see Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. How do they look on defense? We just haven't got a huge sample size of it, but what we have hasn't necessarily been great. Number two, what we've learned, the bench is not a natural fit. The bench, and I should say the bench as constructed, and maybe a better way to say this is the bench is a mystery. I'm not convinced that we have seen, I don't want to say the opening night bench lineup because I don't know how much can change, especially with guys in and out of the lineup. I don't know. We'll find out who the opening night bench unit is. We'll find out what the opening night rotation is. But right now, you always hope that you walk into a situation and you're like, here's the five guys, here's how it's going to flow from one to the other. And here's when those five guys are on the court, here's what you do. Right now, the five-man lineup of Bones Highland, Davon Reed, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and DeAndre Jordan, that unit has not looked like they have a clear idea of who they are and what they're trying to do. Like, okay, this is a spread pick and roll team. This is a dive team. What is it that they do? We haven't seen that yet. So the second unit hasn't been a natural fit just yet. And I suspect that there's going to be two things that have to happen. One, they have to discover an identity. The team collectively has to discover an identity for that group. And number two, they have to figure out who the rotation is, like who the actual guys are. Had everybody been healthy, I think this would have been a little bit easier. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a situation where the Nuggets get into the season and give it 10 games or 7 games or something like that. If the bench unit is getting killed and it looks like last year and Denver is 2-3 through 5 games, do they make a panic change to the second lineup? Probably. I mean, probably 2-3. You don't want to fall behind too much. That ruins your whole season or your whole first half of your season because then you start chasing things. You already know you're going to have built-in rest for Jamal Murray and Michael Porter. So I don't think that this is a thing that they would allow to go too far. But at the same time, I'm not sure it's a thing you're going to be able to correct in the preseason since there's only going to be not tonight's game, but then 2 more games after it where everybody's there for you to kind of piece things together. In segment 2, I'm going to talk to you about what I think is a good end goal or a good possibility for that second unit, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Number 3, this one's flown under the radar, but on rewatch, it's been a thing that has stood out. I think Aaron Gordon looks good. He got cooked by DeMar DeRozan. I mean, DeMar DeRozan cooks a lot of guys. I think Denver's going to have to get more creative. If they play Chicago, in the season, they'll probably do some different things, throw different looks at him. But I think Aaron Gordon, just from a health, his shot looks really good. He's done something. I mean, I got to ask him next time at practice, but he's done something mechanically to his shot because he looks a lot smoother than usual. And I just think he looks really good. And it's gone under the radar. Him being back in the role that I think is best for him, because we're more focused on Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, and Jokic's wrist or what have you. We're more focused on Bones Highland. I think it's gone under the radar that Aaron Gordon has made his free throws. His 3-point shot looks good. He had a mid-range pull-up the other day. It looks good. And then he's got like 4 or 5 dunks already in the season. So to me, Aaron Gordon is a guy that I think we're sleeping on a little bit. And tonight, if you don't have Murray, you don't have Jokic, I wonder what Aaron Gordon looks like tonight with a little bit more of an elevated role. Tonight actually could be a funny game just in terms of intrigue. Michael Porter, presumably playing, he'll be the first option with that first unit. And Aaron Gordon probably the second option. So I'm kind of curious just to see what that looks like, even if I don't think it tells you anything about the Nuggets. It tells you something about those guys individually. And then my last thing we've learned is that Jamal Murray and Michael Porter are healthy. It's gone under the radar because, again, just the team, they haven't played a ton of minutes. Jamal Murray comes up limp. But if you just ask, like, watching those guys play, does it look like, ooh, they're not quite back? They're not back in terms of Jamal Murray's going to get quicker. He's going to get, like, this happens all the time with Jamal Murray season, more confident, more in rhythm, more aggressive, whatever it is. But if you just say, like, watching those guys run, jump, attack the paint, rebound, whatever, they both, to me, look fully healthy. So the parts of their game that have to improve now are, like, mental or timing or what have you. But that's a big deal. Like, think about it. Coming in, we didn't know that. We had seen clips of Jamal Murray playing at this or that, and we'd heard little stories here or there. But actually getting to watch Jamal and Michael Porter both, and by the way, Michael Porter, seeing him even in the scrimmages out in San Diego, attacking the basket, falling on the ground hard, getting back up, not being afraid to make contact. To me, I think those are things that have gone a little bit under the radar as big takeaways. What we have not learned I mentioned earlier that the bench is not a natural fit. So what is the end game there? Who's going to end up playing and in what roles? We still have a ton of questions there. I think you could even narrow this down just to say Bruce Brown. What is his role on the team? Like if it's just we talked about how great he's going to fit with Jokic. He hasn't really played with Jokic so a whole lot. So is he just a bench guy now? And then does that diminish a little bit of his value or what we expect from him? That'll be a thing to kind of monitor. Where does Zeke fit into all of this is another question. I mean, Zeke has been the talk of the Nuggets early on, yet he's not necessarily playing a ton of minutes. So that's another one I kind of want to that I think the Nuggets are going to have to answer. And then how does the starting lineup look? Murray looks healthy. Porter looks healthy. We've been waiting to see that lineup. We've really only seen it for 3 stints. Really, 2 stints. We've only seen it for 2 stints in the first game because you didn't have Jokic. So how does that first lineup work? In the first one, they couldn't guard anybody, but they scored every time, to be expected. In the second one, they scored every time and got enough stops, especially at the end, to kind of show us a flash where you go, okay, there it is. That's they have it. But that first game was like a tune-up. You thought the second game would be, okay, now we can really start to judge them, but we haven't seen it. So hopefully we get to see that on Wednesday and Friday, because right now if I told you, I'm doing some shows this week, some of the national NBA shows this week with people that are like hitting me up saying, man, Adam, I'm thinking about picking the Nuggets this year. I'm wanting to be edgy, this or that. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm with you. I love it. The Nuggets team has all this talent. And then the last week, how do they look? How does Murray look? And when I think about it, I go, to be honest, I haven't seen it yet. We just haven't seen it. We've barely seen anything. We're just hearing things. And then, you got preseason basketball where those guys haven't been on the court. So how does that starting lineup look? I hope we get a good sense of it by the end of the week, heading into next week. I really hope that next Wednesday's actual opener, regular season opener, is not our first time basically getting a look at those guys. I think that would be bad. I think that would be a little bit of a bummer. Today's show brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find right people for your team faster and for free. No matter what size the job is, what type of job you're looking for, LinkedIn, easiest way, the most used professional platform. So it's going to be the easiest way for you to kind of find the candidates that you're looking for. You just fill out a profile. It's super easy. It just takes a few minutes, and then add your job and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires and leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Check them out. LinkedIn Jobs. We'll be right back. Somebody here in the comment, let's see, Dustin asks, Adam, how much do you think, I'm guessing he's talking about defense, is a lack of strategy or just a preseason lack of effort? Definitely think there's some preseason lack of effort. Like that first game, which is the only one we could really grade the team on because that was the one Jokic played in. Jokic, maybe it was a wrist thing, maybe it was a weird funk, who knows? But he just didn't seem himself in that game. So I don't think talking about schemes and this or that, I never think that the schemes make that big of a difference. In a playoff series, they do, because then you come up with specific strategies. But what a team is doing, teams are mostly doing the exact same things. It's the little details of it. How focused is the team and how connected are they on the little details? To me, that's what separates good defensive teams from not so great ones. Obviously, talent is the #1 separator. But #2 is, does this team seem to understand all of the different defensive reads they have to make? Are they on a string? Do they execute the little details of it? Not just I'm playing this position, I need to go here, I need to rotate here. It's like, no, you rotate to this spot at this time and you communicate this at this time. So to me, those are the things that are concerning. Is Denver just looks like they look like a preseason team. It's not like they played a good Oklahoma City team or a good Chicago Bulls team in either of those times, like good offenses in particular, and they got absolutely torched. So to me, I think it's effort and I think it's attention to detail, and it's concerning that the Nuggets had made that a point of emphasis and are where they are. I want to play a clip for you real quick that came after the post-game commentary. This was from Michael Porter Jr. and Bones Highland. And it came up. Did I upload this to the right place? Yeah, I did. And it came, it was a question, and it had a very interesting response from both guys. Let's play it here.
We're out there together. It's more like dynamic, and it's tougher to guard when you got numerous guys who can spread the floor and also shoot and drive. But time will come with that. Being able to play, with Mike and the other guys, where it'd be more dynamic on the floor. But I just feel like the connection just there. Like I know, like when they kick the Mike, and he knowing like if it's not there, he hand it back, play out the screen. Hit spread out to the 4-point line. It's just make it more tougher to guard. When you got so many dynamic scorers out there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
No, I mean, as soon as he came out, the second time I said, man, we got to figure out a way to get us on the floor together, because the type of game we play, the shots we shoot, we understand each other. We understand the tough shots that we can make and shoot. So it just makes it easier to play with each other. You know what I mean? So we said it tonight on the bench when we were talking to each other.
Bones, I think after the first game, you set up your.
All right, so an interesting couple of comments there. The first one, both guys say they want to play together. And Michael Porter goes as far as to say, we got to find a way to get us on the court together. And then the second part of that, of course, he says, we understand each other. We understand the tough shots that we can make and shoot. I don't want to do the thing where I psychoanalyze every little thing here and say, oh, is Michael Porter's demanding more, bad shots, basically, which is, by the way, exactly what he said. And by the way, somebody says can't hear very well. I'll try to boost the audio when I edit this one afterwards. So on the podcast version, that hopefully it comes in clear. But basically, both of them said, hey, we want to play together. And Michael Porter went as far as to say, we want to play together, or I want to play with Bones, because he understands that I can take tough shots and make tough shots. First off, over the summer, when I was really trying to dig into this team and think about this team and what, the different avenues this could go, I came to I came to this theory that Bones is the most equipped player on the roster to unlock Michael Porter. And part of the reason was for what he's saying here. Like when you play Jokic ball, you have to be able to read and react. You have to be willing to do all these different things. And, Michael Porter hasn't proven to be able to play that style so far. He fits into it because he's such a talented player, and Jokic's such a talented player. But to me, there's a frustration, it seems, between the team about how do I fit into this? I want to do this thing, and I don't know where that thing fits into here. I think that you can make those two things fit. I think Michael Porter can score 25 points where he's such a talent. It's funny when people are like, do you not like Michael Porter? I am higher on him, I think, literally than anybody else in Denver. I mean this sincerely. I am higher on Michael Porter Jr.'s upside than I think anybody, and I talk to all the media members, than anybody in Denver. I love watching that guy play. I love his game. He's just so frustrating because I, with every fiber of my being, believe he would be the best Jokic ball player. He would be elite playing that style, but there's some either inability or unwillingness or just inexperience or a combination, or likely a combination of all of that has prevented it so far. But that being said, I do think there is an opportunity to have your cake and eat it too, for both sides, meaning to get Michael Porter to better understand the flow of the offense when Jokic is on the court, to fit into there, and to be more flexible and trying to figure out where he fits into that, while also letting him play with Bones Highland, where it's a little bit more of a Brooklyn Nets style, hey, we're just going to give you some tough shots. We're going to run less interesting sets, and we're going to have you do that. To me, when I was thinking about the summer, I came to that conclusion that Bones is probably the guy that can do that, because Bones is a very good, he hasn't done a great job of point guarding that second unit, but I think that has probably less to do with him and more to do with the dynamic of he needs to be the team's best scorer and facilitator. Super hard job to do. I think for anybody, there's not only superstars do that. Like Jokic is both the scorer and the facilitator, right? LeBron. There's not a lot of players that do both. Oh, I'm going to be the lead play setup guy and the lead scoring guy. Very, very tough thing to ask a second-year player to do. If you give Michael Porter, you can maybe focus a little bit more on kill, because the reads are a little bit easier, where it's like, no, we're just going to Mike on this play. And I agree with Jeff Morton, by the way, the homie here, that it is the biggest issue the Nuggets have to solve. Like, it's not because it's a problem, but because it's the solution. It's like the thing that ascends the Nuggets to an unguardable team. That's one of the most beautiful teams of all time. It's just how do you get to that point? But I do, as much as I don't like Michael Porter being so willing so frequently to go to the media with these types of things, but I also, as a media member, I can't get too upset about it because I love it. It gives you insight to a player, and I'm going to try to treat him fairly and not say, hey, man, you're throwing a teammate under the bus, which I don't think he's trying to do. I actually agree with him. Playing him with Bones, especially when you look at that second unit, Michael Malone in the preseason so far has been doing his hockey rotations where it's all 5 bench guys, all 5 starters all the time. If you look at the history of the Nuggets under Michael Malone, the starting 5 plays more minutes than anybody in the NBA. They play their five guys more than anyone. Even last year, the without Michael Porter, with Jeff Green as the starter, was like a top 5 starting lineup, and they didn't even start together the whole year. And Jeff Green's not a guy that plays a lot of minutes. Malone just loves keeping his 5-man units together. I don't think he should do that this year. In fact, I feel pretty strongly about it. That lineup with Porter is going to be great with Murray and Aaron Gordon and everything else. But to me, he's the guy that most lends himself to staggering, especially when you look at a second unit that has some very good defenders and that doesn't have enough offense and spacing. And I think you can make Bones' job a lot easier on him. So I went with this. Who are guys that I would love to see the most with Jokic? Meaning, don't take them away from Jokic because it's going to, diminish. You want to have your best punch. To me, Aaron Gordon is number 1. I know that people are going to say, "What? Not Murray?" Murray's number 2, but Aaron Gordon's number 1 in large part because Aaron Gordon to me is a great Jokic ball player, and the numbers with Gordon and Jokic over the 2 years they've been together have been absolutely absurd. I think it fits really well. They've developed a nice chemistry. To me, those two guys should Aaron Gordon should almost mimic or just copy all of Jokic's minutes, or at least an awful lot of them. The second one for me is obviously Jamal Murray, and you could probably just tie those two guys together. Those two guys, to me, they form a little coalition, and Michael Porter comes in and makes them even greater in smaller doses. But those 3 guys. The next one's Bruce Brown. We talked about Bruce Brown. I think he's looked good at the individual parts of his game, but he hasn't necessarily looked great on that second unit. I don't necessarily know where he goes. I would love to see Bruce Brown play more minutes with Jokic. You don't necessarily need – I think in certain moments you're going to need the more spacing that KCP provides, but I don't think you're going to need that, especially if you're playing with Murray and Jokic. So if Murray and Jokic are on the court together, you can have Bruce Brown on the court. I think you're going to be great. And you're actually going to get the ball popping, I think, more with those guys. So I would love to see a little bit more minutes there. The next guy I have is Bones Highland. I don't know how – again, somebody has to sacrifice here. I would love to see Bones and Jokic together as much as possible. It's just when you start going through rotations, somebody's not going to be able to play a lot of minutes there. And as much as I'd love to see Bones, I think we're going to get those minutes mostly when Jamal Murray's not playing, when he's sitting out games. Nonetheless, I just wanted to put it there because I do think Bones is a great Jokic ball player. There's Jeff Green. I think Jeff Green's a sneaky, great Jokic ball player. Jokic loves tall guys. Jeff Green's really good at punishing mismatches. Michael Porter's really good at scoring on everybody. Mismatch, not mismatch. Jeff Green, when you run some of these actions and the team tries to switch and say, okay, put a point guard now on Jeff because we're trying to switch non-1-5 actions, Jeff Green's really, really good at punishing those. And he's also just a smart player. He's a veteran. He knows how to play. And clearly has a relationship with Jokic. So Jeff is there. And then the last 2 guys I put on here were Christian Braun and Vlatko Cancar. I don't think either of these guys are going to play a lot, especially early on. But I do like those guys solely with Jokic. Like, both of those guys know how to play. Again, I've said this a lot. It's not a shock to me that the Nuggets have had some high-profile surprise wins with Vlatko in the lineup. The 7 being the most notable, but there have been others too where it's like guys are out, you think we're going to lose. Nope, Vlatko comes in and starts, plays with Jokic or plays a lot of minutes with Jokic, and Jokic has a big game. Not necessarily Vlatko has a big game, but Jokic has a big game. If you do come to a moment where you're shorthanded, I would just love to see them try to get a guy like Vlatko or a Christian or both with Jokic, because to me, teams would figure that out over time. But if you're talking about a rest situation, you got an injury here, injury there, you're trying to rest Murray tonight, Michael Porter, you're trying to rest him as well. Okay, mix it up. Don't just bring the second unit up to the first unit. Maybe try to play some of these other guys in some staggered minutes and see what happens, because, again, I think they know how to play off them. Guys I wouldn't mind seeing play without Jokic, meaning finding minutes without him. And I just put 2 guys on this list because, again, I could make the entire list guys I'd like to see play with Jokic. Spoiler alert, he's really good. He makes everyone better. But I'm just trying to think of specific guys. Without Jokic, the 2 guys are Michael Porter Jr. for those reasons. Like, he wants his ISO shots, and he's good at it. And when Jokic is on the court, typically you're going to struggle on offense. give him an ISO player. Boogie Cousins was a little bit this. I mean, yes, people focused on the fact that he played a bit like Jokic, dribble handoff, scoring, this or that. But also, he just was a good ISO player. Like, he was good at, hey, give him the ball and let's see what he does. Michael Porter, I think if you came to Michael Porter and said, I mean, this is a guy that likes to get shots, right? He loves to get 17, 18 shots up if he can. If you told him you're going to play half the game with Jokic, half the game without him, and you're going to take half your shots that are going to be mostly catch and shoot, cuts within the flow of the offense when you're with Jokic, and when you're not, you're going to get your points mostly off of touches. We're going to run actions for you, this or that. To me, part of being a great player is being able to do both. So Michael Porter, I would hope, would embrace that and find his 17, 18 shots a game in that sort of mixed environment. And then the other guy is KCP. And I love KCP with Jokic. It's going to be part of the best lineups for Denver are going to feature Jokic and KCP. They're going to start and close games with it. But if it were me running it, I would love to see a stagger that brought KCP and MPJ off the court early. You brought Bruce Brown on the court. And I don't even know who the other guy would be that you would have to bring on. I mean, is it Jeff Green? I don't love Davon Reed, so I think Denver has to figure out who it's going to be in that, that's in there. But if you brought KCP and MPJ off early so that they could be on the court with the bench, to me, that would be a really exciting one. And Bruce Brown naturally is a Jokic player, so putting him in KCP's role would make a lot of sense for me. So that's how I would try to attack, try to go about this. And like I said, I thought you have to listen to players. Michael Porter talking about, I can take tougher shots, and Bones lets me do that. Playing with him lets me do that. Again, whether you agree or disagree with him saying it, or it makes sense to me that it's one way to try to bring him along in the way that you want to. What do we got here? We got BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player development, team matchup news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball. Man, baseball playoffs are so great, man. Woo! Baseball playoffs are fantastic. MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Matt Moore will be back with us tomorrow. We'll be recapping the game the Nuggets play today with Phoenix Suns. You can go to Ball Arena tonight. I think tickets are like $1. So if anybody wants to check that out, watch the team up close. Preseason's fun. Sometimes you can get really close seats, and the game is so different when you sit that close. I wanted to do a quick segment here on guys I would not be surprised if they got traded this year. Every year, 1 or 2, some years 4 or 5 players get traded that you think, wow, I did not see that coming. Oh my goodness, the big name guy that got traded. And this year is especially interesting because, you got that Victor W. looming, and there might be a team that's really good that expected to either be really good or at least kind of good that says, you know what are we doing with this player? It's time to move on from him. I mean, I'm going to start. This is a crazy one, but I'm going to start with Damian Lillard. And I know Lillard has talked. He's made his brand being a Portland guy. I'm not the guy that's just chasing a ring. I agree with him, by the way. I'm not trying to say he's like playing a part here. I don't know how good that Portland team's going to be. I'm a pretty big skeptic of Portland, actually. And all these teams are always like, every team, you can say this about Denver, is one injury away here or there. But they're especially that way, and they haven't exactly been, Damian Lillard himself hasn't necessarily been the healthiest guy. That if you're getting to Christmas and you're just a team that's in the 11 seed and you're like, man, we're so far away from being in the 6 seed, which is the playoffs, like we're still going to have to likely be in the play-in, and then if we're in the play-in, are we even in the playoffs? And if we're in the playoffs, we're an 8 seed, and we have to go up against the 1 seed. Teams like that might look, and again, Lillard I don't think is going to request out, at least publicly. He's made it too big of a part of his brand to not, ask for anything publicly like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Portland just said, are we better with Lillard or better if what we could potentially get for trading Lillard? I just wouldn't be surprised if it happened. We'll wait and see. Kevin Durant's another one. Anytime you publicly call for your coach to be traded, you publicly ask for yourself to be traded, you make all that turmoil, and then the team's like, oh, no, we just brought it back together. We did, those guys squashed their beef. No, they didn't. Brooklyn just wasn't going to be pressured into trading Kevin Durant. They have him under contract for 3 years. But that doesn't mean they weren't going to stop. They were going to stop exploring trades for Kevin Durant, especially if this is a team in Brooklyn that the season this year goes exactly like it did last year. They might look at that again and not panic. They don't want to be in a position of weakness. Oh God, this guy demanded something. We got to go now. But it might be one of those things where they're like, let's see how the season goes. Oh, it's not going so great. Let's get out from this as quickly as possible and get back as much as we can. So Kevin Durant, it sounds crazy. Would not be surprised if he got traded. I put Monte Morris and Will Barton both on here, and I know they just were traded, so this one had, a lot of these are things that you'll probably wait and see. But as I talked about on Locked On NBA last week, I would not be surprised if teams of Washington's caliber started to trade away veteran players that were making them good because they're going after Victor W. Wimbayama, I think John's telling me to learn how to pronounce it. Wimbayama. I think I wouldn't be surprised. So that's another one. Monte, those type of veterans, everybody knows about the Utah veterans. Of course, those guys actually would be shocked if they weren't traded. The next one's OG Anunoby. And I know OG is a guy that had wanted a bigger role, another one of these that had kind of gotten squashed under the radar. I would not be surprised. I expect big things from Scotty Barnes this year. That's my guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he was another guy that just like quietly, that trade rumor kind of came and went. I wouldn't be surprised if that was revisited. I have two teams on here that I put the entire roster. I mean, minus like their core guys, but Atlanta Hawks and Chicago Bulls. They're two teams to me that are good, not great. And I think both teams want to be great. I don't think either one is going to be a tank team. But I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta got a little bit impatient this year, knowing how last year went, knowing that they made this big DeJounte trade. If it's not working right off the bat, I think you're tied to DeJounte, you're tied to Trae Young. They got a lot of players over there that would be easy to trade to say, hey, okay, now we think we know what to do to build around these two guards. We needed a different thing. And you start to move the other pieces, who, by the way, are some really good pieces, and try to get out from them. Next one I have is Draymond Green. I don't expect Draymond to get traded. That's possible. I think Draymond, and I think everybody in the NBA knows, that Draymond is in the best spot for him. He's really good next to Steph. He's really good doing that system. Wiseman is not going to replace Draymond Green. He might make them different, and maybe different works as well, but I kind of doubt it. Draymond Green is in the spot that he needs to be. Nonetheless, it is a pretty big headache. I will say this. Last week I was thinking like, oh my God, this is going to really affect the Warriors season. You're kind of caught up in the shock of the punch and this or that, and punching Jordan Poole, his teammate. Steph's vibes are too strong, man. They really are. I think Steph is one of – when people always do this, who is the best leader, it always comes out to like Chris Paul and LeBron James. Like even the GMs do this. And look, I don't know. I'm not close enough to say it. What I will say is that underrated in leadership is just how does it feel being with that person. And Chris Paul always wears out his welcome. Does he push guys a la Kobe, a la Michael Jordan? Absolutely. But there's also an expiration to those types of things. And we've seen those in the past. By the way, Chris Paul has been that guy his whole career. Guess what? His teams always flame out in the playoffs. I'm not saying that it's because of his leadership style, but Steph Curry has this different one where everybody seems to feel great playing with him. Andre Iguodala would literally take a bullet for him. And then you have this moment where Jordan Poole gets punched and it's embarrassing and the video leaks and all this or that. Then you get to a preseason game the very next day. Steph Curry's personally handing him the trophy for having the best free throw percentage on the team last year. They're laughing. And Jordan Poole goes out and drops 25 points in 22 minutes. Like, I think it's underrated. Steph, Giannis, Jokic, all are guys that I think most people would love to play with because of how they get it, and they don't have the egos. I think Steph is the only of those three that has. It's not just I don't drag you down, I don't make it all about me, this or that, but he makes everyone feel good. And it's the most underrated. When people talk about Jokic, I hate when they're like, well, he's a 7-footer and he can pass, as if that's it. It's like, no, well, he also has the best touch. KCP was asked the other day, what has surprised you about Jokic's game that you didn't see? And he's like, his hands are just so good. I didn't realize his hands were this good. Well, we watch him, and we never talk about what makes Jokic so good, his hands. It's like eighth of the things that you talk about. But at the same time, does Jokic have the best hands in the NBA? Probably. I think with Steph, we talk about the shooting, we talk about the off-ball movement, we talk the gravity, all these things. I think one thing you've never mentioned, because it's like eighth on the list of what makes him great, but it's not that it's not important. It's actually extremely important and underrated. We never talk about is he is the vibes master, the number one all-time vibes master, that when guys play with him, They just seem to have their best years, and they seem to be happy and content in ways. Put Kevin Durant aside, which tells you something about Kevin Durant, that he just got jealous of. And by the way, KD didn't get mad at Curry. He got mad at people appreciating Curry for all of these things, in particular Draymond Green. So anyway, Draymond, I would not be surprised if he was traded, even if I'm betting against it. The next one, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This is my hot take. This is my guy. He's really good. I'm looking at Jalen Williams. He looks great. Lou Dort's still there. They gave him the big deal. He's the guy I probably still expect them to trade. You got Josh Giddey, who they seem very invested in. They don't want to win this year. They want to get Victor W. They still have more picks and everything coming in. I look at it and I think Shai and Lou Dort are like best friends. I don't think Shai's going to get traded this year. 90% chance he's not. Maybe 95. But I wouldn't be surprised. The more I sit and think about it, the more I go, he doesn't fit the timeline of the rest of the guys. He's already good enough now. He might have like a really hot start to the year, but the team's not quite good enough. He's just good enough to make them not the worst team in the NBA. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, what could you get for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander right now? You could probably get a lot. So I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying that weird things happen. And for me, it would make sense if they were to try to, you could just get so much for him. One of the things I kept sitting here thinking, would the Nuggets fans, would you want Shai Gilgeous trade for Michael Porter? Would you do that trade straight up? Michael Porter represents a higher upside and plays a position, that Denver's obviously light at. Shai represents, I think, a more natural fit in terms of playing with Jokic. He's long, good defender. You could have the tallest team in all of the NBA around Jokic, which is, I think, something that you need. He's the best at getting into the paint, which Denver hasn't had outside of Bones. They haven't had guys that are great at getting into the paint. What would it look like when you have one of the best in all of the NBA at getting into the paint, playing alongside Jokic? And then, you would think that you got two Canadians, Murray and Shai, playing side by side. Again, I don't know that Oklahoma City would do that. I don't think that they would, actually. I mean, you'd probably have to add a bunch more to the pot if you're Denver. I'm just trying to say, if you got to a point where Oklahoma City looked at their timeline and thought, Shai doesn't quite fit it, or we're trying to lose and Shai's dragging us up, Michael Porter could go to an Oklahoma City team, average 25 a game, probably not help them win this year. Hope that you get Victor W. or one of these other guys, Scoot, whatever. And now you get Chet back. You have Michael Porter. You have these different pieces. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but when I played that scenario out in my head, my thought was maybe Shai is less untouchable than he should be, because I don't really know what Oklahoma City's plan is there with all of those great guards. They have too many guards. You know this from being in Denver. You had Nurkic and Jokic. And that's one position, the center position, guards, you're talking two. But they still have too many good guards that you're not going to have not all of those guys are going to be part of your long-term future. So when do you make the move, and which guy do you go with is a question in Oklahoma City. Obviously, Jay Crowder. The reason I put him on here, we all know he's going to get traded. Is Jay Crowder good enough that, like, if the Lakers they're not going to trade the Lakers. They're going to do that. I'm just, for hypothetical purposes. He went to a team for the Lakers for not a whole lot of return. Would you be worried? I don't think he's quite good enough for me to say I was worried, but like if he landed on Dallas or something like that, you'd be like, okay, Dallas has another playoff guy that at least is playoff tested in some capacity. All right, Miles Turner is the least. I mean, he's been on the trade block for 3 years, so I would not be surprised. Indiana's another team that might blow it up. Buddy Hield's also there. Maybe they try to get rid of their veterans and just race to the bottom. And then this last one was fun, really fun. Who knows what's happening with the Phoenix Suns this year? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be terrible? Is it going to be a disastrous season? Are they a play-in team all year? They went from the number 1 seed to all of a sudden the vibes are just so low. I don't think so. I think it's very likely that they are not the 1 seed, but they're not below like the 5 seed. That to me is the most likely outcome. But maybe they aren't that good. Maybe they are disappointing. Maybe Chris Paul has expired. Maybe there's one injury. Devin Booker misses too much time. He gets injured. He misses 2 months, and the team just completely, loses control of everything. Ayton wants out. All this stuff. Is it possible Chris Paul could get traded? Is it possible that the team would look at Chris Paul and say, "Yes, you got us here, but our moment is gone, and you're at the end of the, you're definitely any moment about to explode. Like you're an old 38-year-old guy, like." Yes, you've had great health for the last few years, but is it worth it anymore for us to say this year's kind of a sunk cost, but next year we'll bring you back? I'm not saying I think Chris Paul's going to get traded. I'm just saying there's a scenario where it would make sense for Phoenix to move on from him and try to salvage some return. And there'd be a lot of teams that would be like, Chris Paul's available. We're willing to pay up an enormous amount of stuff. So, yeah, obviously DeAndre Ayton's a candidate. But Man, somebody says a hard no for Shea for MPJ. It's wild to me, man. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a great player. A great player. What would you do? What would you do with Bone, Shea, and Murray? Win a lot of games, I think, is the correct answer. If you could think about a scenario in which you would have two, not one, two of Murray, Shea, and Bones on the court at all times, whew, that's the best backcourt rotation, I think, in all of the NBA if you were able to pull that off. Would you be light at small forward? Yes. But again, Aaron Gordon has been a great forward, and he's like low usage. Jeff Green's been good. I think you could probably fill those roles out with somebody a little bit more defensive minded and low usage, and then you count on your guards and Jokic to be so dynamic that nobody can handle it. So to me, I would do it. I think it would be a no brainer. But I'm high on Michael Porter. But I'm also high on Shea. I would probably go for it. All right, that's the show today, guys. Matt Moore will be back with me tomorrow. Went a little bit long today. Matt Moore will be with me as we recap the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns, which takes place tonight, Monday, at Ball Arena.